This is Arklatek's People in Politics Sunday edition. A look at the issues and decision makers shaping the Arklatex and the nation. Presented by KTBS.
Hello again, everybody. Welcome to the App on Sunday. It was a podcast for the past year. We've converted it into a full-on Sunday morning television or political television show. The app has nothing to do with computers. The app stands for, as you saw, Arklatek's People and Politics. So we have an exciting lineup for you today. First, let me introduce, one of the things we're doing a little bit differently is having a series of rotating co-hosts. Let me introduce our co-host for today, and that is Greg Hilburn from the USA Today Network. And Greg, first of all, thanks for being here. We appreciate you doing this. Give us a little bit of your background.
Well, I'm glad to be here. I really enjoyed the start of your show. I think it does a great service for your viewers, which I know you have a lot of loyal viewers. I've been covering politics here in the state and beyond for almost 30 years, and I have an office in the Capitol. The Shreveport Times is one of our biggest sites here, and so I'm very familiar with Shreveport and the politics of Louisiana, and I'm glad to be here.
This is going to be a pretty exciting election year, isn't it?
It's going to be very exciting. We've got a Senate race, which the eyes of the country are on, as you're well aware of, and it's our first closed party primary elections in decades.
Yeah, for sure. All right, our special guest today is State Treasurer John Fleming. He is one of the candidates running for the United States Senate. I always like looking at campaign commercials. I think they're very entertaining, and they give you a little glimpse inside the candidates. So let's take a look at this first campaign commercial from State Treasurer John Fleming.
From a blue-collar family, worked his way through college and medical school, naval military veteran, small-town family doctor, successful small businessman employing hundreds, against all odds elected to Congress, founded the strongly conservative House Freedom Caucus, MAGA before MAGA was cool, former deputy chief of staff for President Trump, Louisiana State Treasurer, a principled conservative, proven MAGA, John Fleming.
All right, interesting spot. Greg, I kind of like the way that morphed, showing all the time periods of the State Treasurer's career.
Well, he's had a long career in public service. Obviously, he served in Congress. He's the only candidate, other than the sitting senator, to have won a statewide race. So, considered certainly one of the favorites in this race.
John, thanks for being here with us today, and let's talk a little bit about your campaign and how it's going so far.
Well, thanks, Greg and Jeff. The campaign is going quite well, really much better than we even expected. We've led in every poll that we've run, and in other polls, independent polls. We lead the pack, and then really in the last poll, led Cassidy by 2 points, and then the rest of the pack all added together came up to 17% versus my 25%. But then in the head-to-head runoff, with Cassidy, which is my assumption that will be the setting, I won by 11 points, 40% to 29%. So we've been leading consistently in the polls. Furthermore, we have over 200 volunteers. We're very grassroots oriented. We have over 14,000 yard signs and field signs in place. And so none of our competitors yet have any signs out that we can determine. So, as I say, this is a true grassroots campaign. It's caught fire, sort of a brush fire like I've never had a campaign before. And you know, I've run several campaigns in the past. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that Louisianans are very pro-Trump, pro-America First. And you know, that's been my background. I worked as Trump's deputy chief of staff in the White House during the first administration. And I'm opposing Bill Cassidy, who voted to convict Trump in the second impeachment trial.
And we'll talk more about that in just a little bit. But first, talk to us about the crowded field in this Senate race, because it is pretty crowded.
Well, statewide races like this, particularly for the U.S. Senate, are typically going to be very crowded. But I would say there are maybe 5, 6 truly competitive people in this race. By competitive, they score more than 1% in the polls, and they also already have a political base of some type. And again, going back to the poll that I just mentioned, the last one that we did, I was 25%. Everybody else besides Cassidy added together, aggregated, was 17%. So I think that's the field, that's the crowded field, and it's going to split between 30% pro-Cassidy vote, 70% anti-Cassidy vote, and the person in the runoff, which I expect to be me, will hopefully aggregate all of the anti-Cassidy vote.
All right, Greg, I know you always ask insightful questions. You have a question here for the Treasurer?
Sure, Treasurer. As you know, it's normally an incumbent sitting U.S. Senator would have a slam dunk in his primary. The sitting senator has raised over $10 million cash on hand, but obviously you believe, as do the others who are in this race, that he is vulnerable.
Yes.
And specifically, why do you think that this man is vulnerable going into this election?
Well, again, President Trump carried Louisiana, I believe, by 62 points in the last presidential election. People have not forgotten that 5 years ago, he didn't vote to impeach President Trump. He voted to convict President Trump when there really was no evidence of that. Since then, he's never apologized. He never admitted he was wrong. And several times when Trump was beginning to spin up his race, he called for him to step down. So he's opposed him. And then now that President Trump has Robert Kennedy Jr. in as Secretary of HHS, he's really been an impediment to him and his progress and what he's trying to do to reform health and human services. And then many people just complain. They feel like he flip-flops too much. His votes are too liberal, whereas my votes were 97% conservative, and they're just ready for a change.
Listen, John, one of the big, I guess, points in every campaign, particularly in this one, seems to be fundraising. And a lot has been made about the money on hand that Senator Cassidy has, and I just wondered your thoughts on that.
Great question. You know, the main benefit to raising a lot of money is that you build your name ID. Bill Cassidy has 100% name ID. The problem is that his disapprovals. He's 24 points underwater. That is more disapprovals than approvals. I'm 21% above water on that. And so really all that money, unless it changes minds in some way, it's not going to benefit him. And I will point out that 90% of that money was raised outside of Louisiana.
All right, State Treasurer John Fleming, a candidate for the United States Senate, is our special guest on the App on Sunday. Greg Hilburn of the USA Today Network is our co-host. I'm Jeff Beinfloor, and we'll be back with more with John Fleming right after this. Welcome back to more of the App on Sunday, Arklatex People in Politics. Our special guest today is Louisiana State Treasurer John Fleming, who's had a varied background and very esteemed background in politics. And to my immediate right is Greg Hilburn from the USA Today Network. He is our co-host for today. Gentlemen, thanks for being here. I really do appreciate it. Greg, lead off this block with a question for Treasurer Fleming.
Absolutely. Treasurer, you had just mentioned that the conflict that the incumbent Senator Cassidy has had with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the
Yes.
Secretary of Health. Of course, now Senator Cassidy would point out that he was the swing vote in having RFK Jr.'s nomination cleared. But they have had their disagreements, specifically and most prominently with vaccines. Senator Cassidy is very pro-vaccine. RFK Jr. is a vaccine skeptic.
Yes.
You're a doctor.
Yes.
I don't know if everyone knows that, but
Yes.
you're a doctor. So what is your position on this national discussion about vaccines, whether they're safe and effective?
Yes.
What is your position on that?
Well, my support is for health care freedom. That is, I think every American has the right to accept or reject a vaccine, a surgery, or a medication. And so I'm opposed to vaccine mandates. I'm opposed to vaccine passports, which Senator Cassidy clearly supports. However, on the other hand, I believe that vaccines have saved many, many lives, millions of lives over the years. but they can have side effects just like surgery and medication. So I do think that it's up to the individual or the parent in consultation with a trusted personal physician to make that decision. And I don't think there's been enough study or research into vaccines. And one thing that's really good that Bobby Kennedy is doing is he's really disrupting that whole process, and I think making Pfizer and other big pharma companies more accountable, because people do get injured from vaccines and they need to be properly compensated, and they need to make the vaccines even safer if necessary.
So what has led to the big controversy as the years went by? Because when I was a kid, we got vaccines and nobody thought anything of it, right?
Yes, and again, as a physician, a family physician, I have given thousands and tens of thousands of vaccines and continue to do so. I still have an active practice, and I practice from time to time. But I'm always clued in to whether someone is ready to accept the risk, because there is a risk to taking vaccinations. Guillain-Barré syndrome is one. I took care of a patient many years ago when I was a U.S. Navy medical doctor who had a vaccine for flu and got Guillain-Barré syndrome. So I think these are things that we just need to be aware of and make sure that everybody understands there is a risk to taking a vaccine. But on the other hand, overall, the safety record is tremendously positive for vaccines. But I think we need to do more work, more study. And I appreciate Bobby Kennedy Jr. Really pushing on that and holding these big pharma companies more accountable.
All right, listen, politically, you've had an incredibly varied and esteemed background. We're going to talk to you more about what your platform would be if you're elected. But first, let's take a look at this other campaign commercial, which kind of puts everything into perspective.
Republican candidates may claim they are MAGA, but John Fleming was MAGA long before MAGA was cool. That's the Fleming Washington record.
I'm John Fleming. When I went to Congress, I co-founded the strongly conservative House Freedom Caucus. This began the MAGA fight. When President Trump was first elected, I proudly accepted 3 appointments to his administration, including as President Trump's White House Deputy Chief of Staff.
In Congress, John Fleming's voting record scored 97% conservative. On immigration, John earned an A+ grade for his stand to protect our borders and American workers. He's the only U.S. Senate candidate who passed a federal law to protect your Second Amendment rights and who opposes vaccine mandates. Only U.S. Senate candidate to oppose carbon capture, a Green New Deal scam, allowing big government to take your personal property for big corporations costing taxpayers billions. Strongly pro-life for tax cuts, tight-fisted with your tax dollars.
All right, that kind of lays it all out there. So if you win this election, where are you going?
Well, you just heard it. I'm going to continue going the same route I did the 8 years I was in the House of Representatives in Washington. You know, I was in Congress when Obamacare was passed. That was in 2010. I was very much opposed to it, and there are a couple of reasons why. Number one, in that 3,000-page document, there wasn't one single word that would actually reduce the cost of health care. And I predicted that you would see your fees, your co-payments, your premiums, everything going up stratospherically over time, and it has done that. The other thing is it really sold out to big corporations, big healthcare corporations who are making tons of money with middlemen and all of that. Meanwhile, the average patient out there, the average consumer is getting hosed. So I want to go to Washington and begin a true reform of healthcare where we bring back the marketplace, where you can actually see what the price is, you can judge value and price, and you can be a consumer and choose that. Right now, when you go for healthcare, you don't know what you're going to be paying, and the doctor doesn't know what he's going to be charging you, because all of that is controlled by the big healthcare companies.
That is crazy. I mean, Greg, I know you've experienced it. I have. We'll go into a doctor and say, what's this going to cost me? And they can't answer the question. That's crazy.
It happens all the time. And you wouldn't go buy a car. You wouldn't go buy a suit. You wouldn't go buy a meal unless you had some idea what it's going to cost you.
Yeah. Greg, got a question for John?
So what Senator Cassidy was involved in passing a law that was going to have more clarity to medical billing, but it has not. What is keeping that from being enforced or enacted? How could you put teeth in that?
That's a good point, and that's really my point, is when you just nip around the edges, nothing ever really happens, because there's other ways that can be compensated for, and it never gets done. So that's why we just need to overhaul the whole system and make it work. because I appreciate his effort to do that, but it's just too little too late. You're up against a huge bureaucracy, a medical bureaucracy, both government and private, that prevents these things from happening.
Listen, I can't believe doctors are happy with this bureaucracy, are they?
No. When Obamacare passed, most doctors were actually in private practice and they could support themselves and families in doing that. Most doctors now work for big corporations and they take orders from the big corporation.
Well, that's kind of disturbing, isn't it?
Yes. Yes, indeed.
All right, listen, we're going to wrap this segment up right now. When we come back, we're going to talk more about all of your background and all the many things you've done in politics, and we will do that right after this. We are back with more of the App on Sunday, Arklatex People in Politics. I'm Jeff Beinfort. Greg Hilburn of the USA Today Network is our co-host for today. And our special guest is Louisiana State Treasurer and U.S. Senate candidate John Fleming. Go ahead and put these bullet points in here. We'll look at those real quick. John is a former congressman from our 4th District, succeeded by Speaker of the House Mike Johnson. And John, I believe that the Speaker came down to Baton Rouge and swore you in as treasurer.
He did, and I so much appreciate it. We've been friends for years. I was the one that actually asked him to run for my seat when I went on to other things. But he came down to Baton Rouge to swear me in, but at the last minute we both realized that neither one of us had the actual pledge that was required in order to swear me in. But we scrambled around and got it, and we had a great time with that.
And you worked with some, as we saw, you worked with some really interesting folks. Jim Jordan, yes. Ron DeSantis, Mark Meadows among those. Talk to us about what it was like working with those folks.
Well, they're a great group of guys. As you know, Mark Meadows ended up becoming Chief of Staff in the White House in 2020, and I joined him as Deputy Chief of Staff, only 10 steps from the Oval Office, serving under President Trump for our nation. And but we all came, there were 9 of us, including the group you're showing there, that actually founded the House Freedom Caucus that's been so active to really anchor conservatism in the House of Representatives when Republicans oftentimes, too often, compromise with the left-wing socialist Democrats in Washington. So it's been an honor to, and I've loved to see how they have really really achieved so many great things, like Ron DeSantis being governor of Florida. I'm so proud of my friends.
When you founded the Freedom Caucus, was that difficult getting that started on Capitol Hill?
It was not difficult because we had 40 committed people to this. The problem was that our own leadership, our Republican leadership, was at times, again, caving in. For instance, the Iran deal with President Obama, which has turned out to be an absolute disaster, as you know, and led to the Iranians getting nuclear weapons. Thankfully, we took care of that this time. But we opposed those things, but we'd be called out by our own leadership, and so we gathered together and said, no, we will protect each other because we're going to stand up for our conscience and what's best for the American people, even when our rhino friends in the Congress are going to let us down.
All right, we're talking with John Fleming, a candidate for the U.S. Senate. Greg, you have a question?
Treasurer, as you've served in state office most recently, there are some examples, I think, of what you've done to advance your national philosophy within your state office. Can you give a couple of examples of that and why you think that's important?
Yes. For instance, the Bank of America approached us to be a bank for our boards and commissions, and we looked into it. We found that they had been deplatforming, closing accounts for conservatives, gun owners, Christian organizations, and so we told them, you're not going to do business in Louisiana on that level with the state government if you're going to be treating our constituents, our citizens this way. As it turned out, we found out later that the regulators in the Biden administration were actually the ones pushing them to do this. Also, we divested $1 billion of investment from BlackRock, which was investing in ESG, which is sort of social engineering. And we did research and found that the return on investment on that type of investment is much lower. And as someone who's responsible for the state treasury and the investment of those dollars, it is important to me to maximize the return on investment. So those are just a couple of things, but we've also done a lot to improve transparency in government, such as launching a website where you can see everything about public schools and charter schools. And we're also now applying transparency to the appropriations process so you can see where your money is being spent by the legislature.
Also, you and I have talked in the past before about debanking. How does that fit into the equation here?
Well, debanking is what I was referring to with Bank of America, but other banks have done it. The national banks were really bad about doing this during the Biden administration. And it was, again, just the deep state going crazy again, doing everything it can to hurt conservatives, Christians, gun owners. And we took appropriate action, and many of them have backed away from this. So I think we've been successful in that battle.
All right, Greg, you have another question?
Treasurer, there's a lot of conversation and activity now as the United States' role in other countries, Venezuela, discussions about Iran. What is your position as far as how far our reach should be into other countries?
Well, I think first and foremost that whatever we do should be primarily in the interest of the United States. We can support our friends and allies as we always have done, but the first consideration is always what is best for the citizens and for the nation of the United States. And the actions that he's taken, for instance, in Venezuela, he toppled a terrible dictator who was responsible for millions of lives, I would say, people dying of drug overdoses because drugs flowing through Venezuela. He is likely to take action in Iran. We know that. In fact, he already took action on their nuclear program. And these people need to be freed up from these despots who have held them down for 50 years. So I'm not in favor of a lot of interventionism. I don't think we should make nations. That's backfired on us in the past. But I do think that we should help whenever we can to really make things right for the people in those countries. But after all, it has to be for the primary interests of the people of the United States.
All right, thank you, Treasurer Fleming. Speaking with John Fleming, State Treasurer for Louisiana, candidate for the United States Senate. Back with more right after this. All right, we're back to put a bow around this broadcast. Greg, a final question for John?
Treasurer, there's already a crowded field. You said that you believe you're at the top of that field.
Yes.
There is one wild card that people still are questioning, and that's whether or not Congressman Julia Letlow will enter the race. Yeah. How would that alter your strategy if she did?
It really wouldn't because, again, it's the top two vote getters that go on to the runoff. And again, through our assessment, our polling, including Ms. Letlow, who's a very nice person and good friend, we would win. We would be among the top two in the runoff.
Okay, real quick, if somebody wants to get involved with your campaign or help you out, how do they do it?
Come to FlemingSenateCampaign.com. And we're very active on social media, and I do answer questions unlike most other candidates for this race.
FlemingSenate.com. All right, John Fleming and Greg Hilburn have been our guests today. I'm Jeff Binefor. Thanks for watching the App on Sunday.
You've been watching Arklatek's People and Politics. Thank you for joining us. Presented by KTBS.